A Bigger Bang turned 20 this year, and we're celebrating here on Hangfire all month long. So join me today as we rank the songs on A Bigger Bang. It's a 16-track album, and at the bottom of the list, I have to put very easily Sweet Neocon. No thanks. I'm sorry, but this is the bottom of the Stones' catalog completely. It's, in my view, the worst thing they've ever put on tape. It's a tuneless, colorless, stripped of any kind of personality kind of song. Nice try, Mick, with the topic of the song. Very overtly political. There's no secrets to what or who this is about. I could group it with songs like Down in the Hole or Indian Girl or Blinded by Rainbows or any of the other songs that had political overtones. But whatever this is, I'm not having it. It's only Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Charlie Watts on this track. Between them three, they're the only ones playing on this track. And if you ask me, Ronnie was the lucky one. At number 15, I'm going with She Saw Me Coming. What you're going to see on this album is a little bit of a bass player musical chairs. Everyone gets their turn to play bass on a lot of the tracks on this album. Mick Jagger on bass is not anything to write home about. It's a great thing in idea as a novelty to have in the liner notes Mick Jagger on bass. Cool, but what does that give to the song? My view, not much. This is one of those songs which Mick Jagger plays bass on. According to Ronnie, this song was recorded live with everyone playing in the same room at the same time, and that includes Mick Jagger on bass. Not much to say here about this one, except it doesn't work for me. Let's immediately get out of the way the biggest complaint that this album has gotten over the years, which is the mastering, the overall sound in this album. The mastering on this album is, in my view, absolutely horrendous. It's such an attack and such a murderous, aggressive sound in the ears, which is basically the Stones and Mick's goal with what they wanted this album to sound like. But it's, in a word, fatiguing to listen to this album in one sitting. So with that in mind, I discovered a hack to kind of get around this, and that is very simply to turn the treble all the way down on whatever system you're listening to. By turning the treble down and bringing up the bass, that'll somewhat normalize this album and actually get it to a point where it's somewhat more listenable, and this at least gives you a chance to listen to this album with a fair shake. Next up at number 14, I'm going to go with Oh No, Not You Again. Great energy. In fact, I think this song would have been perfect on like Some Girls or Emotional Rescue, especially if it was recorded a bit differently. It's got a lot of energy. It's very punchy, extremely in your face, a very aggressive track. Some bass player musical chairs again, because in this song, Keith is credited as bass along with Daryl Jones. You know me, I appreciate energy and I appreciate a great band performance, but there is something about this track that leaves me very cold. I think it's, again, a very cold song in terms of its presentation. It just doesn't seem like there's a bottom to the song. The bass doesn't seem like it's providing anything really productive here. So it just is a lot of drums and vocals and guitars, mainly driven by Mick. I'm not a fan of what Keith is doing here. It's a little bit on the flimsy side, and it's got a lot of power, but I do think it's a bit hollow in the middle. At number 13, I'm going with Biggest Mistake. Mick has gone on record here that Keith was very supportive with Mick going into these very vulnerable areas in his songwriting, specifically with this song. I mean, Mick just flat out lays it out. I think I've just made the biggest mistake of my life. And, you know, it really hits home. It's a really personal song, extremely rare, not only for Mick Jagger, but for the Rolling Stones, you know, to be that open and to kind of show these open wounds. So for that, the song gets points. As a recording, something about it just eludes me. I can't grab it. There's just something there that's missing to me. It doesn't sound like a Rolling Stones song. At number 12, I'm going with This Place Is Empty. Look, when it comes to After Hours Keith vocals, give me How Can I Stop, Through and Through, Thief in the Night, or even Losing My Touch. I think all those are great tracks with great Keith performances on vocals. This one, I also can't get my footing on. The sentiment is beautiful and sweet. Obviously, a love note to his wife, Patty Hansen. And believe it or not, that's Mick Jagger on the acoustic slide on this track. In case you haven't picked up on it already, the whole mission statement for this album is really about keeping this album small and keeping everything between the Stones. That's why you see so many tracks with Mick Jagger on bass or Keith on bass, or tracks without even Ronnie. Keith is on bass and also on piano. He's doing his classic kind of honky-tonk country licks on the piano, which are, very homey and very nostalgic. It's a very sweet song, as intimate as Mick's Biggest Mistake is, but nevertheless, something here also doesn't land for me. At number 11, I'm going with Streets of Love. Good enough hook, a very good Mick Jagger vocal performance in terms of reaching those high notes on falsetto, and a lot of dynamics on this track. In fact, according to Keith Richards, that was his main selling point for this song. He did find that the song was rather middle of the road, but it was the dynamics that really sold him on the very small verses and the very big choruses. I think the lyrics are poor. I'm not a fan of what Mick's written here. I think it could have benefited from another draft, another run through with the lyrics. Surprisingly, there are a lot of guitars on this track, and they're very heavy, chunky guitars playing a lot of rhythm, probably between Mick and Ronnie, and maybe some Keith in there. It's hard to say. But you'd be surprised how much guitars are in there for such a very romantic, dramatic song. Again, I'm not finding the Stones' identity here. To me, this sounds like this could have been on Mick Jagger's Alfie soundtrack. At number 10, I'm going with Back of My Hand. I know, I'm just as surprised as you are. I mean, it's the Stones doing a blues. Why is it so low on the list? I don't know. It has all the makings of something classic, and it does sound like an old Muddy Waters track, if you will. That's Mick Jagger on the slide guitar on this track. Keith is there also, putting in some great licks here and there, but it's really Mick that's really driving this song on guitar. And here again, it's just the three Stones taking care of the entire track. It's Mick, Keith, and Charlie. You could hear some great bleed through of Mick singing the song in his original guide vocal towards the end of the song, most likely coming through the drum mics. Every time it comes on, I want to like it more, but for me, it never takes off. At number 9, I'm going with It Won't Take Long. This song would have been actually much lower in the list if you had asked me about it maybe 3 months ago, but in rediscovering it and rediscovering the album these last few weeks, it's really gone up in the ranks a little bit. A pretty good vocal by Mick. I find the choruses to be a little hollow, and there's just something not gelling there for a Stones groove. Apparently, the song started out as a soul kind of song. I assume much softer and maybe even slower. Who knows? We have no recordings of it. But they eventually decided to turn it around and amp it up and give it some more weight, and this is the result. I don't know, maybe there's an identity crisis that I'm sensing in the song, because it does seem a little forced, and I'd be very curious to hear their first draft of the song. At number 8, I'm going with Rain Fall Down. This is another one that kind of climbed up the ranks for me in recent weeks, and it was all because of that little trick I was telling you about, where when you turn the treble down on this album and turn the bass up, this is one of the songs that really shine through by using that trick. And when I did that, I discovered all these great guitars that were very hard to distinguish if I had not turned the treble down. And I discovered this entire universe of great instruments and great parts and intricate parts that were all buried there. It's a great groove. I suspect it might be Charlie Watts looped. This might be the only track on this album that has a little bit extra post-production involved, because the whole album, as you can tell, is all about it being lo-fi and it being a back-to-basics garage band kind of album. But this song is really the one that kind of rises above all that and is a little bit more polished, a little bit more slick. Daryl Jones thankfully plays bass on this, and it really ties the song together and goes to show what a proper bass player can do to a song rather than someone who can kind of play it like Mick. At number 6, I'm going with Infamy. I'm probably in the minority here with how much I like this song, but there's something about this song that really sits in the right spot for me. More importantly, it's got so much swag and attitude and charisma for me between Keith's kind of laid back, cool vocal and Charlie driving it. There's a lot there for me to latch onto. This is Keith on bass on the track, but I don't really sense his presence there. In fact, it sounds like there are pockets where there is no bass at times. It could be my ears playing tricks on me. But something is very much lacking on the bottom of this song as well. And I couldn't help but thinking what a missed opportunity it was to not have Ronnie Wood play bass on this track. I think he would have laid down a very quirky, interesting bass line, maybe something in the line of Break the Spell from Steel Wheels. It would have been good to hear something else kind of counteract the very quirky guitar riff by Keith Richards here. What I also dig here is there's a lot of Mick on this track, which is very rare for a Keith Richards lead vocal track. Usually when Keith has his songs, Mick is not usually as present, but here he's playing harmonica on the track and also providing some background vocals. So to me, this kind of gives a wink, a little bit of a hearkening back to Connection or Happy, where it's both of them sharing the mic, and it's not as overt as those examples, but you get enough Mick in there to just get a shade of it. And it's a very nice touch for me. I think it really helps tie the track together. The live versions of this song, though, that Keith did try throughout 2005 and maybe 2006, but mainly 2005 during the A Bigger Bang tour, I don't think worked very well. It kind of reveals the song's limitations. It's more of a jam and a groove than anything else. But as a studio recording, I think it works very well. And then at number 6, I'm going with Driving Too Fast. I admit I've always looked down on this song, at least lyrically. It's always seemed a little bit too on the nose. Our old friend Gary Gelbraith was a big fan of this song, and he always used to comment that the song was more about just speeding cars and the illusion of NASCAR that the song really puts forward. And he realized that there's a metaphor here for life, and knowing Mick, there's probably more to it than what's on the page. But as a recording, I'm very happy with what's going on here. First off, Charlie Watts' snare sounds impeccable here. It's got the right amount of crack, the right amount of presence, and it's got so much flavor in it. It's just so delicious to listen to. And great guitar song. There are guitars everywhere. I thought for the longest time this was a Keith riff. Our friend Scott Glupo thinks otherwise. More on that conversation with Scott in another video. Look out for that. Coming up in the top 5 here, I've got next, Look What the Cat Dragged In. Yeah, I know. This is probably very controversial to put this song as high as it is on my list. It's probably going to vary on everyone else's list, but to me, this song moves. This thing has momentum. It's got a great feel. This song to me is totally fun. It sounds like it could have come off the Undercover album. To me, it sounds like a cousin to Undercover of the Night. To me, the star of the show is Ronnie Wood. He is laying down some funky leads throughout this track. A great solo by Ronnie Wood here. All in all, it's a fun track, and it's also pretty historic because it's the only song where Mick Jagger references the Beatles with the lyric, "You look like a leopard dressed as Sergeant Pepper." At number 4, I'm going with Dangerous Beauty. There's something weirdly funky about this track, even though it's a pretty straightforward rock song. It's super by the numbers with frankly, a very limp kind of riff that is supposed to tie the whole song together. But there's not much meat on the bone there in terms of this riff, which is Mick's riff. And again, that's Mick on bass on this song, and he adds absolutely nothing to the track as a bass player. Big shame, because I think the song could have coagulated a bit better had they had a stronger bass presence and given the song to Daryl Jones, for example, to play, just for something more even and consistent. In fact, this whole album to me lacks a bass presence. It's all very harsh, kind of mid to high registers and high frequencies on this album. And the low end is really kind of missing for me on this album. At number 3, I'm going to go with Rough Justice. I know it probably is a cliche. It's the first song off the album. For some people, maybe a song that's a little too derivative. But for me, I think this is as close as the Stones got to a classic 70s rocker. It's a very alive track. Keith has gone on record saying that he most enjoys Mick Jagger when he plays it cool and relaxes his voice and just gives a vocal that is just so effortless. And he specifically quotes Rough Justice as being one of those examples. Ronnie, in a way, kind of ties the song together with some fantastic slide work all over the song. The outro is to die for, just everyone playing their guts out and guitars everywhere and Mick ad-libbing and Charlie going nuts. It's one of my favorite moments on any Stones recording. It's one of the best outros ever. The only points I take away from the song is the intro, the Stones kind of tumbling into the song in the studio. And in a way, it's supposed to kind of summarize what to expect on this album. It's a very loose, very grungy kind of production on this album. But for me, I think it takes away from the song's impact. At number 2, I'm going with Laugh, I Nearly Died. Instant classic. It's atmospheric, it's dark, it's cinematic, it's got personality, it's dripping with vibes. This song is absolutely up there for the Stones. I just want to bite into this song. It's got so much flavor and so much character. It's irresistible. Speaking of characters, I always wonder where this character is coming from. This character is sort of like a world traveler going from one place, one corner of the world to the other, yet he's always searching for something. Things are not kind of coming together for this person. Makes you wonder how much of that is Mick Jagger himself singing about himself. It's really not worth going down all that thinking about because Mick is an enigma and he gets inspired by many things. And there's no way of knowing if any of this is true or just a fantasy of someone he created or something he's thought about once before in his life as he traveled from continent to continent. Mick plays keyboard on this track, some very tasty licks on the keyboard. He's playing percussion as well. This is Mick's song, basically. It's his riff that starts the song, but Keith is there playing some very tasteful licks on the left channel throughout the song. Again, this is another track where it's just Mick, Keith, and Charlie. Fans have always said that this song could have come from side 2 of Tattoo You, and that's totally right on the money. Charlie sounds incredible on this track, adding a lot of power and a lot of drama to the song. The guitars, the keyboards, the atmosphere, the drums, it's a very atmospheric track, really creates a very strong vibe, which the Stones have always been great at, and to me, it's up there with all the great Stones classics. And at the very top at number 1, I'm going with Let Me Down Slow. The song is bright, it's original, it's fresh, and to me, a classic. The Stones doing country, always a win. Great lyrics, a very strong melody, and some great guitars everywhere. You hear acoustic guitars, you hear electric guitars. Keith is all over the track with some great work, especially on the solo, which is him. To my ears, this sounds like a song that Mick brought to the table that had a very good input from Keith. To me, that chorus, that baby, baby, baby part, is totally a Keith line. The fact that it's him playing the lick on the guitar as well underneath it sounds very much like a Keith thing to do. So I wouldn't be surprised if he had that lick and he just added the baby baby part at the top of it. And then you add in Ronnie's slide work again and you have just quality stuff here. And it's another extended outro again at the end of the song where everyone's just having fun. These licks are just jumping off and ricocheting off each other, and it's just great to hear them having fun with the song, and they're in no rush to end the song. The fade out happens a little bit later than you expected, which is great because you're enjoying the song too, and there's a lot to enjoy. So I say move over Dead Flowers, move over Let It Bleed. There's another Stones classic in town. So in the end, what do I give A Bigger Bang? In the end, I'm rating it 3 out of 5 stars. On paper, it looks like the Stones album that everyone was asking for and waiting for, especially as they were moving out of the 80s and 90s, where they were being accused of doing too much on albums. Too many producers, too much production, too many people on the album playing with the Stones, blah, 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 too much, too much. And some would say that Bridges to Babylon was the climax of all that, where in that album they had several studios going with different personnel going in each one of them, with different combinations of Stones playing in each one of those. So this album was, in a way, a kind of correction, if not overcorrection, to Bridges to Babylon. So here's an album with literally just the Rolling Stones. I mean, in fact, that's sort of what the title, A Bigger Bang, is supposed to capture. With a smaller, intimate setting, a much larger impact comes out of it. And that is what A Bigger Bang is. It's a completely stripped down, back to the basics album. If there was any album to be called stripped, it wasn't the live studio album that they did in 95, but this album should have really been called that, because that's exactly what they did. In terms of production, this really comes off the playbook of like something like Beggar's Banquet to me. There's something so sparse and so direct on A Bigger Bang that I can't help but think going all the way back to the Jimmy Miller era. So with the personnel being much more slim and really sometimes between just the three core Rolling Stones, a lot of the songs really benefited from that. But for me, a lot of the other songs did not. Overall, to me, the album sounds a little raw and undercooked. And to be frank, a lot of the songs sound like demos than finished songs. And like I've been mentioning throughout the video, the album really misses out on a significant bass presence, with Mick taking over bass on like 4 songs and Keith also helping out with a couple songs here and there, and Daryl taking the remainder of the tracks. A lot of the songs that don't have Daryl really suffer because they just don't take off. Another element that makes A Bigger Bang so unique is that this comes right after Charlie Watts' very scary bout with throat cancer. In fact, it's because of that why this album sounds the way that it does, because Mick and Keith really didn't have Charlie there during much of the pre-production process when he usually is there. That's why there's such a vibe of every man kind of doubling up on duties and wearing several different hats on the album. For more on just how special and unique it was to record A Bigger Bang, make sure you check out the documentary I have on the channel on the making of A Bigger Bang. So needless to say, this is Charlie's album all the way. Despite how I may feel about these songs, Charlie does play the hell out of all these songs, and he really is the shining star on this album. So that's it, A Bigger Bang, an album I don't really listen to in one sitting all that often, but I do jump around to hear my favorites. So what did you think of A Bigger Bang when it first came out in 2005? Has your opinion of it changed in the last 20 years? Put it in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe, because there's going to be a lot more content on A Bigger Bang coming up. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Hangfire.